Hi, everybody, and welcome to Coming Back this week. No intro music today, no interview. I just wanted to say hi and talk about what's going on in the United States right now. I've said on some previous shows that I take Sundays off of social media. There's nothing really special about Sundays for me, but I told myself for the year of 2017 I wouldn't log on to any social media. So Sundays kind of became a day for me when I can reclaim my peace of mind if I've lost track of it during the week. So this past Sunday, I was heartbroken and devastated to hear one of my soulmates read a headline off of her phone to me. 26 dead in Texas shooting. I listened with this silent heaviness as she read off what the news outlets knew so far, and in less than 90 seconds, I felt my heart swell with pain. It was awful. It is awful. It continues to be awful. And it was the same story that I'd been hearing for years. I'm going to let the sirens keep going because this is just fitting for today. Gun violence and these unexpected, ridiculous, outrageous acts of terror at our churches and our queer nightclubs and our country music concerts has got to stop. Our hearts are broken over this. I know we'll all die, grief growers. I talk about death all the time on this show. I know we'll all die, but we do not need to die this way. This type of tragedy and trauma does not have to be a reality in our country. When we sit back and absorb and read headlines when things like the Texas shooting happen, and we're not doing something, we energetically are allowing these stories and these patterns to continue. So I want to talk about doing something today. After loss happens, after tragedy happens, after devastation happens. A lot of people use the phrase, I need to do something, to escape from their grief. They throw themselves into activism or charity or religion or a quest of self-discovery as an attempt to cope instead of turning and facing their pain. This is something I'd like to call today blind doing. The grief recovery method would call it a grief myth, to stay busy instead of grieve, to relieve that pain and that pressure in these short bursts of doing instead of facing everything that they just lost. Blind doing. This could also be acting out of survivor's guilt or atonement or trying to make up for the fact that a loss has happened by gaining somewhere else. Blind doing. But what I want to talk about today, grief growers, is mindful doing. Taking mindful action when bad things happen. Mindful doing is doing with your heart open. It is feeling wholeheartedly the pain of what happened and taking mindful action that not only benefits your heart and your healing, but the hearts and the healing of others. It's doing that transforms pain instead of circumventing it or pointing fingers or putting it off for another day. It's doing that has doubts. The actions sometimes feel like they're not enough or that they won't matter in the grand scheme of things because the problem is so big and our hearts are so heavy. But in mindful doing, you take action for the action's sake and then for your heart and for other hearts as well. I'm not 100% sure why the Texas shooting got to me so bad this week. I don't have any family there. I wasn't worried about anybody. But when I heard the story and I saw the scene start to unfold in my mind, I just felt the weight of this universal and energetic pain. This pain of fear and trauma and having life taken and being forced into violence and uncertainty and terror. Having everything taken from you in an instant. And my heart was broken. We could do without loss like this. My heart was broken. And this week, I just want to tell you, if your heart is broken up over something, if your heart is broken, do something. What feels right to you right now, grief growers? What can you be doing to honor or heal or help or start moving towards change? What can you do to say to your broken heart, this was awful, this still is awful, but here's one step we can take today together? Glennon Doyle Melton, one of my favorite authors, I just finished her book Love Warrior this week. She did a Facebook video this week called The Next Right Thing for Gun Reform, and I have a link to it in the show notes. It's her version of what she calls a family meeting, which is a broadcast about the things that change us, the things that break our hearts. And she talks about in the video where we can go from here as a country, as women, as a nation, as gun supporters, as people who want a safer world for ourselves and our children to live in. And she reminds us in this video that if we're heartbroken or wanting to numb out, or if we're angry, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. If we're feeling all of these emotions, there's not something wrong with us. There's probably something wrong. Something that we need to respond to. Something that we need to look at and talk about and research and state our piece on. I just loved how she phrased that. There's not something wrong with us. There's probably something wrong. Mindful doing, you guys. She is advocating mindful doing. Brene Brown, another author, also posted an article about everything that's happened in Texas, which is her home state, and her feelings on gun reform, and her doing something, her version of doing something, is calling out and writing about the bullshit, pardon my language on this one, that's presenting itself in the world right now. The article itself is titled, Calling Out the Bullshit. The idea that there are only two options for our country, 100 total % guns or absolutely no guns. She talks about how hard it is to be doing what she can, where she's questioning the system and pausing to research and straddling the fence and listening instead of blindly taking sides and driving ahead. Those only two options, guns or no guns, there it is, that blind energy of blind doing. She advocates mindful doing in her world by way of thinking and exploring and listening, which coincidentally are all valuable tools for our doing and for our grief. I will also link to her article in the show notes today as well. Grief growers, I want to talk about doing something today because that's what pain is to us. It's a catalyst for action. It's an invitation to movement. It's a call to another way of being. We need to do something after loss, not to fix ourselves or the world or to find closure or any of that other crap, but to find our voices or our beliefs or our community or our safety or our home or our tribe or our faith again in the world and humanity. Doing something in the aftermath of our pain gives our heartache a place to stand and say, hey, this hurts my heart. Does it hurt yours too? Yes. Let's talk about it. Let's listen to each other. Let's build something different because this way of being isn't working for us anymore. This way of doing it just isn't working. Mindful doing, mindful action can pull us out of the hopelessness and the darkness of grief. It is not, I'm telling you it's not, a total fix. Actions are not a total fix to your pain, but they are a start and a step. And mindful doing puts your voice and your energy in the larger conversation about whatever you happen to be advocating for. Whether it's gun reform, whether it's something religious, whether it's different ways of dying, advocating for hospice care, whether it's cancer treatments, whatever you are advocating for. So what exactly do you do when you want to do something? This is the part where I say right here, only you can decide what feels right and appropriate for your heart. What feels doable for yourself and your life. This is the part that's hard for me, because there's always that inner voice and those outer voices of not doing enough for your cause, not doing enough for your heart, not doing enough for your people. There's a fear of doing something, anything, in relation to your grief for fear that it will not be enough, that it won't somehow balance the scale of your pain. So many people do nothing. They choose to do nothing in response to their pain. But let me tell you today that whatever action you decide to take for your grief, if it is awake and conscious and mindful doing, it is enough. You cannot wait for mindful action to show up. You have to summon it into your space. What does your heart want? What does your heart want? What does your heartache want? You have to summon it. Blind action does not magically convert into mindful action. You have to invite it to the party. So ask yourself today, in this space, what feels right? What's the next right thing? What feels brave? What feels mindful? What's something I can do today or this week or this month to show that this pain breaks my heart and I'm going to show up for it? I'm going to do something. Today's world makes it really easy to get involved, grief growers. You don't have to have money. Everybody's first thought is money, and you do not have to have money. If you do, all you have to do is Google, donate to the charity the cause event is, and you're taken right there. If you don't have any money to spare right now, grief growers, you can sign up with lots of different organizations to get emails about issues that break your heart right to your inbox. You can sign things right from your phone, right from your computer. I like to get things by mail, so I literally sign up for rights groups to send unsigned petitions to my representatives to my home. Then I sign them and I mail them to my representatives myself. There's a text app that I love that's 100% free called Resistbot that lets you send letters straight to the people who are representing you at all levels of government. You put in your zip code and they say, this is your House of Representatives, this is your Senate, this is the President, and they give you ways to get in contact with them. And all you have to do is type up text in a letter, say, what are you doing for gun reform? What are you doing for end-of-life care? What are you doing for animal cruelty in our country? And they respond to you. By mail, by email, however you would like to provide. To access Resistbot, you can send resist, RESIST, to the number 50409. That's resist, RESIST, to 50409. I'll put this in the show notes as well. You can also sign petitions. There's new ones coming up every single day on change.org. You can make a Facebook or Twitter or Instagram post asking for suggestions or organizations in your area. You can join a meetup group if you physically want to go somewhere and march and hold signs and do something. Chances are, my grief growers, you have a friend that is connected to this type of activism, to this type of doing something in some way, whether it's online, whether it's petitions mailed to your home, whether it's texting, whether it's Facebook, whether it's meetup groups, whether it's marching. You are more connected to doing than you think you are. Grief growers, there is so much we can do. And I don't know everything. This isn't an exhaustive list of options for doing something after a loss, but it's a good start. It's something. And if something presses on your heart while it's broken, answer that call and do something. You don't have to leave your home. You don't even have to get off the couch if you don't want to. All you have to do is respond to these bad things happening with your mindful action. Respond to these bad things happening by doing something. Whatever feels good and whatever feels enough for your heart, I promise you it matters. This week, my doing something is sharing Glennon and Brene's responses to Texas, as well as writing to my senators about gun reform using Resistbot. I would love to know what actions you've taken after a loss, whether that loss is death, divorce, diagnosis, or something else entirely. I would love if you would join me this Monday, November 13th, on Facebook Live at 1 o'clock Central Time, and we'll talk about how there are two types of actions you can take after loss, blind action and mindful action, and how mindful action is what calls us to heal. Through our voices, through finding our allies in heartbreak and being heartbroken, and through slow but meaningful change. Thank you so much for joining me today and listening to What Breaks My Heart. I see you. I am proud of you and the work that you're doing in the world. And I love you. Because even through grief, we are growing.